One of the most fascinating pieces of information that I read lately was the following, which was published yesterday in Israel. A research done at the Hadassah Hospital, Hadassah University Hospital in Jerusalem found that the quality of Israeli sperm has declined alarmingly in the last decade. The last 10 years, the average concentration of sperm among Israeli men declined from 106 million cells per cubic centimeter to 67 million per cubic centimeter. And if you look at that lightly, here is a quote: if we keep going at this rate, a decline of 3 million cubic centimeters of sperm cells per year will reach an average of 20 million in the year 2030. According to the World Health Organization, this is a fertility impairment. So we know about the demographic problem of Israel. Here is another demographic problem of Israel. And why do I start with that? What's the connection between that and the elections? My topic is the Israeli elections. Very simple. Very simple. Can one guess? There were 2.5 parties, green parties, who failed in the elections. Now the causes for that story is not the Jewish origin or the Palestinian problem. It's the matter of the level of health of Israeli society. Water, air, soil. Had we had strong green parties in the Knesset for the last 20 years, we wouldn't have reached that situation. So it is related to the elections. There were some other, I'm sure no one will discuss the political element of this story in the next few years in Israel. But since the elections, there were many analyses about the elections and the results of the elections. And 3 were the major ones. One was really, everybody spoke about that, discussed the move to the right. Not only that the balance of power between left and right is 65 to 55, which is a major change, but the whole spectrum moved to the right, and you felt some of the expressions this morning in some of the discussions here. The other thing is the diminishing or shrinking of the major parties. Both major parties are having now less than 25% of the seats in the Knesset. In the past, both of them used to have even 80 seats in the Knesset, not only 50. So, and the second 2 largest parties have very little more than 10%. So it's really a shrinking of the major parties, which is related to the third problem, and that is the lack of political stability in Israel. This has been the 7th elections, but we had, in the last 61 years, we had 31 governments, cabinets or governments. So the average is about 2 a year. One for 2 years, which is not very high, and it really expresses some of the problems that Israel has. So these were the major topics that were discussed by everybody who discussed both political scientists and media mavens who wrote about the elections. There were some other interesting topics that were not discussed. One of them, for example, is the role of the millennialists. We don't have such a term in Israel. Here, it was a major phenomenon, because one of the major reasons for Obama's success was the millennialists. The new voters, the young voters, first-time voters, moved dramatically to the left, if you want to use the Israeli terms, and supported Obama. In Israel, the opposite occurred. In Israel, this generation moved to the right. It's a huge generation. It's the first and second-time voters. As a matter of fact, it is about 1 million people which voted for only less than 10% of them voted for the left. It's a major change. And the reason, of course, is the breakdown of the negotiations in the year 2000, the beginning of the Intifada, and the public opinion in Israel that moved all together. These 8 cohorts, their political socialization was under the impression of the Intifada, and therefore they moved to the right, and therefore whoever dare talk about two-state solution or some good Palestinians that we don't hate is considered, should be wiped off of the political debate at all. So these million people add to them million Russian-speaking voters and some others. You can see why this is shifted to the right. Now again, I'm not going to talk about that. What I want to raise are some issues that were not discussed at all, and in 10 minutes I can do it only very, very shortly, just to put it as a research items, not more than that. And the first thing is anti-politics. This phenomenon of anti-politics has existed in the last 10, 15 years in many states, not only in Israel, in Europe as well. And while the turning vote in Israel was a little lower this time than before, 65% participation in the elections compared to 63 previous elections, it's still very low. We used to have 80, 85. So one out of 3 did not participate in the elections. Among the Israeli Arabs, 1 out of 2, which really shows alienation from the political system. So this is just one example, but if you look deeper, you will find many more expressions of these anti-politics. First of all, is lack of interest in politics. People are not interested in politics anymore. There is a decline in the number of people who show interest in politics, read news, discuss politics, etc. 73% of the Israelis lately in one of the opinion polls advised their relatives not to be close to politics. There is a decline in trust in political institutions, in all political institutions. The worst case is the Knesset. Only 20% of the Israelis have some trust in the Knesset. There is a very strong negative attitudes towards politicians. More than 50% of the Israelis argue that without real corruption, not small corruption, but real corruption, you cannot climb up in politics. And if you read the articles that were published in the Israeli newspapers after the elections, particularly after the creation of the Netanyahu coalition, I wanted to bring it to you and to show you some expressions, but we don't have time for that. It's really horrible. The words that were used were never used in Israeli politics. Is cynicism, criticism, animosity, hatred of anything that is related to politics. It's not only politics, it's the position of the Knesset. The Knesset as a national institution, it becomes so weak. And therefore, everybody who runs to the Knesset to be a minister. Because to be a member of Knesset doesn't count anymore. And indeed, Netanyahu was very capable to bring a third of the Knesset, of the member Knesset, into the cabinet, as ministers or deputy ministers. The weakening of the Knesset is a weakening of the notion of representativeness, which is the basic notion of democracy, of parliamentary democracy. 68% of the Israelis say that the Knesset and the politicians do not reflect the public opinion. Now, it's a real show of mistrust of the Knesset and the system. And indeed, there is delegitimization or decline of the legitimacy, not only of the government, but of the regime as such. Therefore, you hear so much about proposals to change the electoral system or the political system. And as Sam Wilsig rightly spoke this morning, there is a huge increase in the number of NGOs, organizations in the civil society that are replacing these weak, corrupted political institutions in Israel. And as Miri Talmon mentioned as well, people move from the public domain to the private domain. Let's live my own life. I don't want to know about anything else. I don't want to know about politics. I don't want to hear about it. I want to live my own life.